Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Happy Wednesday evening, early evening here on the West Coast, probably later evening for you guys out on the East Coast, and then all other parts around the world. Just happy proxy filing to all the apes. We are going to talk through, as you can see, today's going to be the proxy vote part one. There was enough meat in this proxy filing, as many of you have probably already seen, that I decided let's go ahead and split this up. In particular, obviously the hot topic is the share vote. We're going to vote on how many shares AMC will have at its disposal. And so I'm going to break that down and go through that today. It was big enough and long enough. I just decided there's enough content here. I don't want to try to force this all into one really long video, and especially, super long video on a proxy vote is not the most exciting thing ever. But talking about how many shares we have, certainly we have a long history of having those conversations, don't we? We had the conversation in 2021. We had the conversation around APE and whether we would convert and all of that. So we all have a lot of history on this one in AMC. And so I'm going to approach this with some neutrality actually today. You're going to get me a little more neutral than usual, just out of respect for I have been through the share vote wars. I know how this conversation goes. I know how emotional it can get for some. And I just want to personally give you all the respect of, apes together strong. So I'm going to be somewhat neutral. You'll probably kind of get my view here and there leaking out, right? Nobody can be 100% unbiased, but just want to kind of give you guys the heads up. Today will be a little more neutral as opposed to, obviously I'm kind of ride or die for AMC, right? You guys know that. But so let me give you the flow of how we're going to do this. So I'm going to go through the proxy materials with regards to the shares specifically, and kind of, you guys know that I like to try to read the filings, see if I can parse it out and put it into kind of plain English for all of us to get on one page together. So you'll get my view of what the plain English is. I'm going to actually give you the argument against, and then I'll give you the argument for. So that's that neutrality I'll commit to here in this video. Just going to give you, and for me, honestly, even if I have a strong point of view on something, I like thinking about the opposite. Just helps me think through an issue. And then I'm going to give you some general considerations, and then we're going to finish on a positive note because, frankly, I think we all need that. And I don't know, who doesn't want to finish on a positive note? So let's just dive in. All right, so you know that we've got the proxy vote. I think here's one important bit that I don't want you all to miss. Do you see the record date? So you will be voting your shares. You'll get, one vote per share. They will record who owns how many shares as of October 13th. So if you plan to participate in that vote, you need to own shares by October 13th. If you want to have more of your vote, then consider what that means in terms of the shares. Your votes are going to be kind of assigned to you as of the end of October 13th. And then the actual shareholder meeting will be December 10th. So we will be, this is why I said also on X yesterday, I had a busy day yesterday. I couldn't make a video. I said, guys, we've got time. There's plenty of time to talk about this. So you've got between now and October 13th to decide how many votes you want to sort of own. And then you've got until December 10th to vote them. I'm sure we'll be getting emails from our brokers. AMC has some language in the filing about giving us the information digitally. So, you'll get a date from your broker on when you need to vote by. We probably have all the way until the last minute, but we'll see more information on that. Some people can choose to attend in person, although if you look at the proxy filing as well, obviously we've had some, for lack of a better term, I'll say some interesting cast of characters in the past, and perhaps AMC reserves the right to say, actually, never mind, we don't feel super comfortable with everybody who's coming. But generally, you can go in person and attend, and they have said they will put this out as a webcast as well. That'll be a listen-only event. I will be listening. I'm not traveling from here in Oregon to get over there, but so I'll be listening. Hopefully you guys will too. I really encourage you all to just be actively engaged in your investment. All right, so let's talk about shares. We are voting. You can see this is proposal 5 out of a list of proposals. We are voting on currently AMC effectively has 550 million shares. Now, we're voting to move from these 550 to 1.1 billion. And so we're doubling the shares that AMC could have in terms of the common stock. And then we're keeping, actually, by the way, there's also preferred equity the preferred shares, keeping, I think there's 50 million of those, or anyway, so those are still being held by AMC as well, and you would see that in the filing too. So let's talk through. All right, where's this coming from and what's going on? Well, you will remember that I kind of said in one of the recent videos when we had the $40 million just paid off, right? I said we had our refinance in 2024, then we kind of had a refinance here in the summer of 2025, and this is now just kind of the final, I don't know, crossing T's and dotting I's from the refinance. If you don't recall, like in 2024, Adam and the team pushed through some refinance by also creating this Movie Co. LLC, which then housed some of AMC's properties. Those properties, I've talked before in some other past videos that an LLC it's called a limited liability corporation. You can't see my hands, but I'm moving them like a bubble, like wrap a bubble around whatever's inside the LLC, and then it's kind of like there's the liability from that piece of the business doesn't spill over anywhere else. So it's kind of protected. It's in its own bubble. That's why it's called a limited liability corporation. And what happened was some of the properties got put in there, some of the debt got assigned to those properties. And so it was kind of separated out from the rest of the business. Just in terms of legal entities, it all still rolls up under the parent company, AMC Entertainment and all of that. So it's all still AMC as far as you and I, the shareholders, are concerned. But this is kind of a legal entity and sort of, court protections kind of a thing. Well, that meant that some of the debt holders said, hey, you used to have all of your properties securing the debt that you're holding with me. Now some of them got kind of cordoned off or protected under this LLC, and I don't really like that you're not securing my debt that you're holding with all of the properties. You've kind of changed what we negotiated. So you guys know that there was a court case, and then we settled out of court. That was great to see that it got settled. We didn't have to, go through the long, protracted court process. And this is the follow-up to that settlement. So you saw that we paid off the 143 million. That was a debt to equity swap. So there was a company that got shares. Then because the share price kind of held up high enough, there was another 40 million wiped out. And so you're going to see that even in some of the language here I'm going to show you. So what we've got as a result of all that is this senior secured exchangeable notes. So just hear that word exchangeable, right? That is the debt to equity swap. We can take debt and exchange it for shares. The debt holder will say, okay, I'll erase this debt, off the board as long as you give me shares. And, well, the thing is, when AMC agreed to this, it was kind of a handshake with these debt holders because we didn't have enough shares to even give them. Effectively, we're kind of out of shares. There's a few left, but most of those are really being held for executive compensation. You guys know that Adam and others, Adam in particular, is paid 2/3, I believe, of his salary is in share grants. It's not even cash. And so they've got some of those shares, set aside. Adam has used kind of a squirrel before. They've got some shares squirreled away for the executives, but it's not much, and it's certainly not enough to deal with these exchangeable notes. So what happened was in the refinance, AMC said to the debtors, listen, we'll go to our shareholders, we'll ask for more shares, we'll probably, I won't put words in their mouth. We hope that we can get them on board with us, and if that happens, we're going to give you these shares and you're going to wipe out our debt. So that's these exchangeable notes. We're going to talk about kind of what happens if we vote yes and what happens if we vote no. And so the debt holders said, okay, fine, we're good to go. We have agreed on this settlement. We'll let go of our court case and we'll accept this. And so there was kind of a if the shareholders approve the shares version of this debt, and there's an if they don't approve. And so that way AMC and the debt holders were able to kind of settle and not have this court case anymore. So the senior secured exchangeable notes due 2030. In order to become exchangeable, that's our vote on the shares. So we're going to talk about that. And also, you need to understand that will reduce the interest rate that's payable. And then AMC has some language about deleveraging the company. We're definitely going to be talking about that through this video. So before we get there, what will happen is basically you'll see part of AMC's legal documents are going to be revised. And so you see right now the corporation has the authority to issue 600 million shares, of which 550 million are common stock. I'm talking to you about the red lettering here. And then I had mentioned a minute ago, we have the 50 million shares of preferred stock. So in the past, that's how Adam had created Ape. He had used some preferred shares. Or, if you study strategy with Michael Saylor, they use preferred shares to do quite a bit of creative financing as well. So what we are doing then is we are taking the common stock from this 550 to this 1.1 billion if we vote yes. Okay, so again, you're doubling the amount of shares available for Adam and team to put into the stock market. All right, so let's talk about what that's going to do. So there's $154.5 million of debt. Remember, I said we paid down the 143, then there was another 140 that got paid off. So far we've paid down 183. Well, there's still this 154 out there kind of left hanging. And something's going to happen with this 154. By the way, you can kind of see that the 40 happened also because new exchangeable notes in an aggregate principal amount of approximately 194.4 million, which was adjusted down to 154.5. So that's that 40 million. The pay down that we had the announcement from Adam, that is reflected here in this proxy filing. We went from 194 down to 154. So part of that has already happened because we had enough shares to wipe that out. Actually, pardon me, that was wiped out with no more shares, right? That was the fun announcement. That was really wiped out from the first round of shares. Just the price held up enough that the debt holders had an agreement to just erase another $40 million of debt. You go back and look at my video about that one. That's a couple videos ago, specifically talking about the 40 million. That all gets explained there. I won't rehash that here. But so now we have this 154.5 that is left on these 2029 exchangeable notes. And there is quite a bit more in total on these, but there's this 154.5 that are kind of on the senior secured that are exchangeable. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that, and actually let's just go there. So you will then see language in the proxy filing. By the way, just a reminder, I always say, hey, no trust me bros here, go read the filing for yourself. I'm giving you screenshots, so hopefully it should be pretty clear. I'm not making anything up. I'm taking this straight from the filing, but always worth going back and checking because, to be honest, one of the reasons, guys, so I'll tangent here for a minute, that I don't really want you to just trust me is, first of all, I can be wrong. I'm not some expert. I've told you guys my background is supply chain. I do have 2 master's degrees in business. I did work fairly senior at Nike for 21 years. Now I kind of consult people and tell them how to run their supply chains. So I have a lot of qualifications in business, but that doesn't make me an expert on stocks, and it definitely doesn't make me an expert on proxy filings. I'm just another guy who went and read this, and I'm giving you my point of view. And then the other reason it's very important that you kind of do your own DD, right? We always used to say that a lot more in the past, is I hear people on space calls, I see other people trying to pump videos that I just see all kinds of wrong things getting stated all over the place. Reddit, X, you name it. You guys know how it works. People just say all kinds of wild stuff to get clicks. And so I just really recommend you don't get in the habit of just blind trust, even if I hope that I've earned your trust in a way, but I just don't want you to be in the habit of just accepting things blindly. Like, go ahead and fact check. So let's talk about, I mentioned that's the $154.5 million. And you can see AMC is saying we would expect to reserve between, I'm going to round up here, guys. So between 67 million and 123 million shares of common stock. So I've just mathed that out for you up here. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I want you to hear there's 2 pieces. And so that's the 2 bullets at the top. What we're voting on, that, like, if we vote yes, this is going to happen pretty quickly. That either somewhere between 67 to 123 million shares are going to pay off that. Let's go back. It's going to pay off that 154.5 million. And then there is going to be another 15 million shares to cover some fees. So look at this, $15 million payable in shares of common stock determined based on the price during the 60 consecutive trading days immediately following the vote. So from 60 days from December 10th, they're going to track the price. I'm going to assume that's just a moving average. You see I put a question mark up here because I didn't see language specifically spelling that out, but obviously it says price determined during the 60 consecutive days. It's probably just the moving average or the VWAP or something like that. And so we will have some stock price that's going to pay off these $15 million, this kind of fee. I believe, now I'm really just making this up. Just a minute ago, I said fact check and don't trust. So now let me just make it clear. I'm about to make something up. I don't have facts to back this up. I believe some of these fees are just part of a settlement. Remember, this was a court case and we settled out of court, right? Well, sometimes if you settle, you make concessions. And you could even easily see one of the, what I believe was a concession also, because you ought to be saying, wait a second, what do you mean we're having $2.30 at best for these shares, right? We closed today. I was very busy today. I didn't track it as closely. If we don't run hard, so 284. Okay, yeah, that's why I used even this 285 here. So we closed today at 284, but you can see if we give a yes vote that this debt, this 154.5, is going to be paid off at 230 a share. Well, it's my personal take that that just has wrapped in, let's call it, settlement fees for these debt holders to say, fine, we'll let go of our lawsuit. AMC basically said, all right, we'll sweeten the pot because none of us wants to go through a big lawsuit. And that's normal business to me, guys. You're hearing that I'm pretty chill and mellow about that. That stuff happens. Sometimes you get it more in your favor. We had a lot of debt. Remember, we had like 12, 13 quarters in a row where we were paying debt down at a discount. So we had a lot in our favor for a while. Perhaps this one was not in our favor. I leave it to Adam and the board to explain. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, what I'm telling you, but I'm just reading between the lines. If we're offering a debt to equity swap that is below the actual market share price, that probably was a concession. That's what I'm reading into that. So I just hope, I suppose I said I would stay neutral on that. I've seen people try to FUD you because that is what happened also on our 143 that become the 183. That was effectively a little bit below market. Well, I was okay with that because again, it was a settlement. You're going to get people kind of acting like they're pulling their hair out and saying that's very negative. You're going to have to decide how you feel about that. I suppose that one I'm not being so neutral and I'm admitting I feel fine about it. I don't love it like none of us loves it. I'd love to see us getting way higher per share. We believe that we're undervalued to begin with. But it's part of business. Sometimes it's not personal, it's just business, right? So, all right. So you need to know if you vote yes, then there are 67 to 123 million shares that are going to pay off 154.5 million in debt at these prices. Then there is also however many shares it takes. You can see I've given you that at 285, that'd be 5.25 million more shares to pay off this $15 million fee. Okay, so $154 million of debt gets wiped off and a $15 million fee gets dealt with. Then there's a little more. So there is also our 2030 debt, and there's some language in the proxy filing that says, so you can see I've just given you the very top line. A yes vote will reduce the interest on some of this from 8% to 1.5%. A no vote shifts the interest up from 8% to 13%. So right now we're basically paying 8% on this. You can see there is 6% cash interest and 2% what's called payment in kind. Basically, payment in kind is if we want, there's a certain amount of the interest we can kind of roll back into the debt, and it sort of just increases your debt until you're paying that down. But effectively, you just add those. And you can Google search that too. Generally, you can kind of add those and come up with your total interest. So that's 8%. I suppose I'm oversimplifying some of that, but let's just call it that. So the point is, if you vote yes, then what's happening is these debt holders are saying, okay, we like that AMC has access to capital. These are my words here. We like that AMC has access to capital. It's paying down debt, and so it's a lot safer. And they've given some concessions. Now, remember a minute ago, I said we gave concessions on the share price, but they're giving some concessions. Now it's back a little bit, in our favor, where, you think about 1.5% interest, right? That's very, very low interest rate. So we would have some debt going all the way down to 1.5%. That is a swing back in our favor, right? So there were some trade-offs. It seems like, they got a kind of concession on the share price of some of this exchange. We got a concession on the interest rate only if we approve, though. And so no vote, you can see, pardon me that I didn't underline it, but that's where I'm getting this 13%. You can see the 9.5% cash interest and the 3.5% payment in kind on this debt. And AMC in a little bit, guys, gives us the bottom line from the board of what are all the costs, if you say yes or if you say no. All right, so then let's keep talking interest rates. A minute ago, I talked about how much debt gets wiped off. Then we just talked about the 2030 interest rate. You would see all of that in here, going from the 8 to 1.5 or going from the 8 to 13. Then there's the 2029 debt interest rate, a yes vote. And by the way, I'm gonna show you a little bit more nuance to this. But so on this slide, I'm saying a yes vote kind of keeps the interest as is. But on the 2029 debt, a no vote will actually increase the cash interest by a point. It will move up 1%. Or if you're not maintaining paying that interest down and you do that payment in kind where I told you roll the interest back into the debt, it will increase that by 2%. So AMC would have the choice, be making payments at a 1% higher interest rate on our 2029 debt, or maybe we're not making as many payments, but the interest rate is 2% and it's increasing our debt. And so a no vote, again, just increases our debt. So both, all you need to hear is on the 2030 debt and on the 2029 debt, a no vote increases our interest rate. So that's borrowing costs, right? I've talked to you guys about how that hits the bottom line. That's cash going out the door. Or a yes vote, in one case, reduces our interest, and in the other case, just keeps it as is. So, but a little bit more on the 2029 interest rates. There was another piece to this that I thought was interesting. Also in all of this, our debt holders have agreed that if AMC gets our total leverage ratio, so here, the applicable rate, so that's just our interest rate, as defined in the new 2029 notes indenture, and the applicable rate of interest under our, we have kind of a term loan credit agreement if we need a little bit of access to short-term cash. You can see that's just $2 billion. The interest rates on those those are set based on our leverage ratio. So it's just debt holders saying, okay, if you start getting less debt, you're a lot safer and I'll reduce your interest rate. It's a lot like you guys. If you go for a house loan or a car loan, if you have a lot of debt, they look at you and go, you're a little riskier. It's kind of your credit score is related to all that too. And so they might change the interest rate depending on how healthy you are financially. Well, that's the same thing happening with AMC here. They're just saying, if you get your leverage down, so what did we talk about, right? Like we're going to pay off $154 million of debt. So they're just saying, if you get your leverage down, we might be reducing your interest rate even farther. I don't have in this filing, or at least the part I read, I didn't see the math on specifically what ratio we have to get down to. So I can't tell you that for sure this vote will reduce our interest rate. But you can see the language. I'm saying may. A yes vote may reduce our leverage to the point where interest rates are decreased. It certainly gets us closer. That would be obvious. A no vote could slow our time to getting to that lower interest rate because it's going to take longer to pay us down to that. All right, so we're actually getting close to wrapping up some of this, and I'm going to get to the arguments for and against. Here is the board's language on a no vote. Now, the reason I'm then going to give you both arguments is because obviously the board is for, and so they've given you a set of impacts that they believe guide us into seeing why they have asked for these shares. And so they are saying, hey, if you vote no, you will prevent a potential conversion of the $154.5 million of debt, right? So they're saying, all right, we're not going to be able to pay that down right away. We would preclude the reduction. I just talked to you about the interest rate that goes from 8 down to 1.5, right? So there's that math on that. And actually then even worse, because the next bullet that I also told you, instead of going from 8 down to 1.5, we're actually going up to the 13%. And so direct increase in the interest rate payable under the new 2029 debt, resulting in incremental annual interest expense of an estimated $35 million per year. Now, I should have done some quick math. I believe that 35 is probably comparing the difference between no and yes. It's not the difference between no and today. And if you're following me, hopefully that makes sense. Because a yes vote actually takes us, if today is the baseline, I wish you could see my hands. If today's the baseline, I'm holding my hands up in front of my face. A yes vote brings us down. Hands just went lower interest rate. That's technically savings. A no vote brings us up. Now, if you count the gap between where we could have been down and what we will be up, that's probably the $35 million a year. I don't think it's $35 million more cost than what we have today. I'd have to go back and do the math on that, and maybe I'll just clarify that in a future video. But either way, it is fair of them to say there is some incremental cost versus an alternative, which is $35 million of cost, borrowing costs a year. So that is impacting our profits. And it would a no vote would require a payment of $15 million, that fee. So if we vote yes, we've got the shares to pay the fee in shares. If we vote no, they're going to have to find a way. They'll probably they may actually increase debt. There's some language in there around that by the 15 million, or they may have to use cash to pay that. And then prevent further deleveraging of other outstanding indebtedness through debt for equity exchanges. So they're just saying, hey, we won't have shares to pay down debt. And we're going to come again to the arguments because, obviously debt shares are not the only way you can pay down debt, but it is fair of them to say, if you don't give us more shares, we cannot pay down debt with shares. I mean, that just kind of stands to reason. All right, so, and then they're saying preclude any reduction in the applicable interest rates under the new 2029 notes, which we've already covered, and the credit agreement resulting from any deleveraging. So they're just reminding you everything I've shown you from the proxy filing, that if we get our leverage ratio down, maybe our interest rates go down. So they're trying to say, hey, there's a lot of savings we could get you. We can get our debt down lower, and then you're not going to be kind of letting us do all that. So buckle up, put your emotions aside, put your objective hat on, because I'm about to give you the arguments against and for. I'm doing it in that order intentionally. So let's just get to it. All right, so the arguments against. And I will just kind of give this argument a title. This is your voting. You're saying, guys, I want you to pay down our debt with profits, not with shares. I want you to pay down our debt with our cash flows, and maybe even things like Highcroft, and if you've got any other assets. You'd be saying, I don't want you diluting me anymore. I want you using the business to pay down debt. And the argument's here. So I think if you were on this side, you'd be saying, well, the last 9 months of 2025 are in total net positive cash flows. So why aren't you using your cash flows to pay down debt? You would be saying that, hey, next year, 2026, I believe you're going to be even better and have full year positive cash flows. Why don't you start redirecting that cash to your debt? And then beyond gets even better. So really you'd be saying to the board, I don't like your share payment plan. Give me a pay the debt as you go with the business plan. And so you'd be challenging them on that. You would also probably be saying that you are not in approval of the current spending rates on the Go plan. I would imagine, this is pure speculation on my part, but effectively you'd be saying, I want you to slow down the Go plan expenses because I want you to use that money towards all of this debt. Because, if we suddenly jump to these higher interest rates and all of that, then I imagine the team is going to have to deal with that and possibly refinance that debt or try to pay some of it down, because you want to get rid of your high interest debt, right? And so you're going to have to find the money somewhere. And so you're probably saying, slow down your expenses on the Go plan. I'd rather you use that on this debt. And you're also probably challenging the board and the executive team to continue tightening operating expenses. You're really saying, I want you to find this cash out of profits or squeezing your expenses. And then finally, your argument is you just don't like dilution, right? So the argument for, you're basically saying, yes, I want you to accelerate paying down debt, and I want you to accelerate us being more profitable, and I'm okay with you doing that via dilution. So going through that, you're saying deleveraging is kind of equivalent to health. And when you're more healthy, you're going to get more institutional interest in the stock. You would be saying a reduction in borrowing costs improves the bottom line immediately. So that's that profits. You would be saying kind of almost you're a no to a no, because the no vote increases interest costs and slows down the Go plan. So I don't want you to do that. You would be saying that, hey, cash flows are going to be stronger. And so maybe, yes, right now you're diluting me, but on the back end of that, now our cash flows are stronger. Maybe I'm trusting you to give me future dividends or stock buybacks or various other things. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that better cash flow. You would also be giving the company shares to participate in any larger run. What if we ever do really have the squeeze event? Then if AMC has no shares, AMC cannot benefit from that. So you're saying, all right, I want you to benefit from that. And then finally, I think you're saying you will have the shares for creativity. Like the GameStop warrants, AMC could not do something like that right now. There are no shares to do that with. GameStop has to have the warrants, I mean, the shares set aside for any of us to exercise those warrants. You guys know that I would love AMC to buy Bitcoin. Well, if they came out and said we're willing to dilute to buy Bitcoin, honestly, I'd be for it. Some of you are against that. That's fine. But I just, the point is there are other things they could do with these shares. So again, argument against, in my opinion, you're basically saying, I don't want you to keep diluting me. The business, we've been waiting for it to turn around. I believe the turnaround is here. I want you to press in hard on that business turnaround and pay as you go and stop making me as a shareholder pay. The flip side is you're saying, I like the idea of getting our debt down fast. I like that it's going to improve our earnings, and I'll trust you to kind of build the value on the back end to pay me back for all this dilution. Okay? You guys can disagree on the reasons I've given, but in general, in my mind, those are the reasons against and for. Ultimately, here's what I think, and I'm going to channel Roaring Kitty just a little bit here. I remember, and you know what, I'm just full disclosure, I'm going to admit, I used to kind of question Ryan Cohen on kind of how he was managing GameStop. And guys, I'm saying that sheepishly because I'm admitting, like, all right, that was a little bit silly, probably sitting in my chair, armchair quarterbacking, not having all the information. But there were times when I felt like he needed to get their cash flows fixed faster. He needed to squeeze operating expenses, all the things. Well, he's done that, right? And so I'm sharing that with some sense of self-humor here. But what I remember Kitty saying in the live last year that I liked, and you guys have heard me repeat it once or twice, is he, at that time, he was saying, well, if you don't think Ryan Cohen is a doofus, then you believe in what's going on. So I'll just say, in a way, this vote for you is, do you believe that our executive team are doofuses or not? Now, I know trolls are going to come out, so I've kind of laid, I don't know, I've put some, I've laid a softball out there for them, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. But plenty of you will just decide, hey, I do believe in this management team, and so I'll go forward. By the way, we don't have to, we're not a cult. If some of you want to challenge back and challenge the board and challenge the management team to give a plan of how dilution is going to end, I can understand all of that, right? So that's why I'm trying to handle this very neutrally. But in general, I guess you just ask yourself, do I believe these people are doofuses or not? And then do you believe in the history of this management team, surviving the lockdown, surviving the strike, making us more profitable than pre-COVID? Do you believe that that earns trust or not? Okay, I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm not really going to make that argument here, but I think those are fair questions. And, Kitty asked them of you with regards to GameStop. I'm asking with regards to AMC. All right, we're going to round out. We're going to finish on that positive note. So a couple things. Regardless of the outcome, remember, you must vote. Please, please vote. If you remember last year, a handful of proposals did not even get enough votes to have either really a yes or no. They just kind of got washed out, and which really ultimately was a no. A non-yes is a no. But it was a little bit sad that last year there was such a low participation in retail voting. So I just encourage you strongly. We're all so proud of the fact that retail has saved this company and retail holds this company. And then if you don't come to the table to participate in the future of the company, then it's kind of like, what was the point? And so forgive me for preaching a little, but just I encourage you very strongly. It does not matter whether you agree with anyone else, but do vote your shares. It's going to be very easy. It's a click of a button from an email, guys. It's super, super easy, I promise. Please, 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 please vote. And then just remember, and I'm going to cover even a couple slides here, the industry is on an upswing. So whether you think this should be a no and you're completely anti-dilution, whether you think this should be a yes and you're pro the plan, regardless, you're in a company where the industry is on the upswing. Think about all the past news we had about Paramount, go 2.5xing how many movies they're going to make a year. The Duffer Brothers leaving Netflix to make theatrical releases, all that Warner Brothers has been seeing in terms of success and future investment. And so let me cover just a couple quick reminders. First off, this one's actually new. This is not a reminder. The bottom left here is a post of mine just last night from an article you can see on the right from CNBC, which they posted Monday. And you can see that they are acknowledging something I've told you for well over a year, and I know Adam and Sean and team have been saying this as well, every bit as long. And so there, you can just see the headline: 2025 box office headed for its best post-COVID haul as winter releases heat up. And interestingly, they used the same three movies that I had. If you look at my Q4 forecast video, which by the way, I'll do a revised Q4 forecast pretty soon. We've learned a lot since then. Plus, we added Taylor Swift, so I will do a revised. But they use the same. Basically, that's almost my slide. I'd have to check if it's in the same order or not. I don't think it is, but I mean, I can't pat myself on the back too much because let's be honest, those three movies are huge. Of course, they use those three. But either way, here's CNBC admitting that hey, this is going to be the best box office since post-COVID, and so that's the media starting to get more and more positive. And then I just want to remind you something I had shown you, and I reposted this on X, I think today too, or maybe it was last night. If you look at 3 quarters almost right before COVID, so you can see here's Q3 of 18, Q3 of 19, Q4 of 19. You can see the three box office numbers. All of these would be our biggest box office that we've had in our entire time here as apes. These would all be a post-COVID record, right? And yet, look at the orange line is our AMC's earnings. And so what you need to see is, look at the far right, this was Q2 that we just finished this year, is smaller at the box office than all of those quarters. In some cases by over $200 million, a smaller domestic box office. Yet notice the earnings are the highest of these four comparisons. So you have three box office quarters pre-COVID that were far higher than the quarter we just finished back in, what did we finish that in June? Yeah. So the quarter that finished in June, and you can see that our earnings now is higher on a lower box office, right? So that is where AMC is. All we've ever been waiting for is a bigger box office, and we're going to fly. And so this is just proof that things have been working. And so there's much more information like that in a video I had from August 21st. Go back and look at that one. That one was actually titled Proof of the Go Plan's Success, and a whole lot of great news. So take a look at that, August 21st, and you will be encouraged, I am sure, on where this industry is going and where this company is going. Whether this is a no or a yes vote, a lot of good things happening. And then finally, just on a personal note, look, reading these proxy filings and spending the time making these videos is, I'm just going to be honest, a sacrifice for me. It's a sacrifice for my family. It is now 6 o'clock here on the West Coast. They are downstairs waiting for me for dinner. I will run there soon enough. And so I'm just going to be honest. I just really appreciate some of you. You can see 73 of you have taken the time at some point in this journey I'm calling this my tip jar. So if you go to Buy Me a Coffee, you can find stock retail on Buy Me a Coffee, drop basically a tip in the tip jar. There are some of you who have, in my opinion, I don't want to ask any more of you. You guys will know who you are, but if for any of you who just want to say, hey, you know what, I just appreciate your time. You can give any small or big amount that you want to give. It's just a blessing to me and my family that you just say, hey, I think your time has been valuable to me. So enough about that. Really appreciate that if you want to give that a look. And you guys know that we will win. So let's go.